having a deep conversation about the latest Wall Street article drop. I'm sure everybody saw just recently, and that's not the point of the podcast, by the way. But we were just talking about, the Surgeon General's come out and saying that they are recommending that on the label of your alcohol that they put it could cause cancer.
Yeah, I mean, what we were talking about before, the rabbit hole I was running us down, and I would love it if somebody out there in, Radio Land or Podcast Land has feedback or an opinion here, if they could comment, especially if they're on the technical side of things. Years ago, and I don't have it pulled up, so I'm not going to get it exactly right, but a few years ago, Utah passed something where if your flavors are ethyl alcohol based, like if you have natural flavors in your product and they're ethyl alcohol based, your product has to be shelved in a liquor store in the state of Utah. And I remember it because it was my time at the lab, and so everybody was calling me going, hey, how difficult would it be to switch over the carrier in our flavor system from ethyl alcohol to propylene glycol, which is a whole scientific rabbit hole we don't need to go down. But this isn't new information, really, right? Yeah. Like the labeling obviously would be a change, and it would require some work from folks. But this just attitude on ALK products isn't new information. So I'm at a bit of a loss as to why it matters. No different. I mean, for me, it's no different. I'm 35, right? Like, yeah. Growing up, it was always like, yeah, alcohol, cigarettes, like there's a handful of things that just are flat out not good for you.
Yeah.
If you enjoy them, act accordingly, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I've been in the sin business for 38 years, but I can tell you too much of a good thing is a bad thing. And I always say moderation is important. But hey, everybody, meet Dave Moore. Dave has been he's been arriving on our podcast the last few weeks. He's out of Sonoma, right, Dave?
Correct.
Sonoma, California. I don't know if it's rainy there today. I was expecting to see you in your truck because you told me that you were going to be regulated to the truck this morning.
My daughters are home for Christmas break from college, and one of them stayed over at a friend last night. So I tried to blur the background with the incredible mess that sometimes teenagers can leave. So hopefully you can't see any of that. But I found a little privacy for sure.
I was hoping to go for a ride in the truck with you this morning, so I was excited. But welcome, Dave. Dave. We're going to have him obviously share his journey with us, but 20-plus year veteran in the alcohol adult beverage space, RNDC, Southern Glacier Wine and Spirits, General Manager Shug. I think I got the gist of the background. Probably not doing you a service. Looks like you got your master's out of Wyoming, which is awesome. UC Davis grad. There you go. Yeah, it's a gentleman I actually do some work for, Lyons Brown. Shouting out to him. He's out there skiing every day. He has a place out there, so I know he enjoys it. But he shares his time between Southern California and Wyoming. I know that he was.
Doesn't sound bad.
Yeah, not a bad situation at all. And you have a book that you just published. I think we're going to have a book opening today, right? We're going to do a book opening.
I did get yesterday. Thank you, by the way. Thanks for having me. Enjoy the podcast, both you guys. Yeah. Thanks for all your hard work bringing in some guests. Hopefully, I can hold my own with some of the guests you've had in the past. But yes, just the book, I uploaded it just a couple days ago onto Amazon, and this is the first print version that the Amazon delivery person sent my way. So I thought I'd do a big reveal on the show and open it up.
Awesome.
Well, let's take a look at it.
Well, let's do it. You want to do the big reveal now? I mean, what do you think?
I hope it's the book. I mean, it's addressed to me. It's about the size of a book. Hopefully it's not something my wife or my daughters happen to open up or send me. Nope, it's the book. Look at that, guys. It's official.
Oh, wow.
Unbelievable. How to launch your alcohol brand in the U.S. This is not for resale. This is the first copy available in the U.S. Anywhere in the world, actually, by the way. So,
can you put it on the screen a little bit? We can't see it. Can you share there? Wow. Wow, congratulations.
And that's me. Well, that's a younger version of me, but no, I'm not sure what the acceptable time frame is of using photos. Just good photo of me, so I tend to use it, but it probably needs to be updated. But there it is. And thank you, Sam.
So why did you decide, pray tell, to write a book? Where did you find the time? Number one, and then two, like, what's the book about?
Yeah. Well, it's about the 3-tier system. It's about the title is Launching Your Brand in the U.S., a guide for startups navigating the 3-tier system, insider secrets and practical advice for growing your brand, your beer, wine, or spirits brand. And this was an itch that I wanted to scratch for years. I actually started writing it quite a few years ago. And when I did, I bought a book about how to write a book. So, listened to a couple of audio books about how to write a book. And so I wrote the first draft version of it. I sent it into to an editor, and I wasn't really sure if there was enough material to be a book. Is this interesting? She goes, "This is great." And then she came back with all the edits, and I was like, "Oh man, this is going to be a lot of work." So it kind of shelved it for a little bit. Got active on LinkedIn. Did a challenge of writing every day for 30 days straight on LinkedIn, and I just really enjoyed the engagement I was getting from the community, everyone in the alcohol industry. I'd write about, at the time I was with the winery, and I'd write about DTC. But the thing that always seemed to get the most kind of traction was talking about distributors and supplier relationships. Like that just seemed to be like, hey, my supplier doesn't understand, or my distributor this, or hey, how do I this? And so I took some of that that material and with all the tools that are available now with AI and apps like Grammarly and stuff, it's like, whoa, it's just so much easier to collect thoughts and bring them down and organize them. And so that's what the book is about. It's kind of funny because Sam, you've been doing this a long time, and I shared just some colleagues who've been in the business about writing a book, and they're like, "Well, what'd you share in the book?" I'm like, "Don't worry, guys. I didn't share anything about the crap that we used to do back in the day. I started early in 2000, but I wanted to start it as a guide first, without getting, because a couple comments I've gotten from friends like, "Dude, you got so many great stories. Like, you need to go deeper into some of this stuff." And exactly, it's just, I didn't know how the book would do. I didn't know if I could finish it right. I mean, it was just a lot to be like, all right, let's bite off this one and really talk about the 3-tier system. So there's compliance stuff in there. There's talking about all 3 tiers, from suppliers to distributors to retailers. And so on-premise, off-premise, marketing, tight house laws, just some real basic, understanding, like, U.S. is a complex alcohol, distribution system. So it was just, I finally had to just at some point say it's finished as well, right? I would go back and say, oh God, I need to change. So I just finally made the decision. I hired, kind of a publishing, not so much a writing coach, but a publishing coach and team that said, it's never going to be finished. And so once I just made the commitment, put the goal of finishing it at this time of year. And the other thing, Sam, I was always an employee up to about August of this year. And there was always something about writing the book as I was employed by someone else, or publishing the book. There was just something that just like, these are my opinions, I didn't want it to reflect, if there was anything negative to come about, I didn't want to reflect anything. And so it just so happens that I'm in between projects, and I'm like, this is something I want to finish. I've been meaning to finish. And so I put it together. And you know what? I've got enough experience to have an opinion. And I wrote a book.
So let's talk about that. So this book comes out. What is the major thing that you want people to know? What is the major theme of the book? At the end of the day, if I read the book, what am I going to walk away from learning?
Yeah, that Dave is a Pulitzer Prize winning author is probably the first thing you're going to realize.
Yeah, probably it'll be a top selling Amazon, I'm sure, for sure. After this podcast, for sure.
Yeah, it's going to go. Actually, it's what is that it's a complex system, And Sam, we were speaking yesterday, you mentioned it, there's so many founders that spend so much time and energy and a lot of money getting to the starting line. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, it's launched. It's we need to find a distributor. That's what I get a lot, is like, hey, we need to find a distributor, And so I think for all brands, I think anyone in all 3 tiers will get a little something out of it, That was it. The thing I did not include so much in the book is I've actually worked in all 3 tiers. So I have decades of experience of being a distributor, being a supplier, and actually owned a pub for 13 years.
You just sold 4 books, by the way. This is like live social selling. So Alicia out there, I just purchased 4 copies on Amazon.
Okay,
you got our industry friends at WSWA.
Okay, thank you.
So 4 have been sold, man. Like, this is like,
much.
you ever see the movie Joy? and she's selling like
Yeah.
the broom or whatever. So this is like live social selling now. Everybody. So we'll put on where to go. You go to Amazon.com. And what is the name of the book again?
Launching Your Alcohol Brand in the U.S.
By Dave Moore. So we can hold it up there so people can kind of see it there for a minute. There you go. We'll keep on tracking the numbers. Keep on joining everybody and get that book sold.
Like it's a QVC channel right now. I got
hey, Gary Vandertuck, when you talk about the 3-tier system and brands coming out in all seriousness, like if you're a brand, you don't have to necessarily you need a distribution by law. I mean, a distributor by law. But there's ways to build your brand through
exactly right
e-commerce way as well. So
that's a good point. So the real, the purpose of the book was to, give someone. It's not designed to be read, cover to cover. You can say, I really want to know. I think the largest section of the book is about the second tier. It just so happens that, I had a kind of a goal for each chapter and was following a formula on writing it. And if there's enough interest in this, there's so much I want to say about the supplier distributor relationship. I've been on both sides intimately, and there's a chasm there. That relationship can be improved. So that's what I think people will take away was like
one of the things.
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, Ed.
You're good.
There we go. Oh, my computer's glitching a little bit. I was going to ask because it's a little bit of what we were talking about before we got on. It sounds like the answer is yes, but do you think this will dovetail into a book series? Right.
I'm thinking so, man.
Right, because again, it's every. I mean, for all of us, for the three of us here, for everybody listening, if you've spent any time in, and I'll just use CPG as a whole, for the and I mean this in the nicest way, but for the uninitiated, for those coming in who were myself 8+ years ago, or who want to get into this industry from a completely different industry, every conversation is a give a mouse a cookie scenario, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'll answer your question at face value, but then there's 12 other things that we need to talk about.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That's a really good point. I think the book is a good source for anyone. I think distributors need to understand suppliers and founders better as well. Retailers need to understand how hard their distributor partners are working for them and the amount of effort that founders have put in. So that was kind of a purpose behind it. And Sam, you bring up something. Let me know if I go too far in this tangent, but about you have to be 3-tier compliant in the United States, and there are systems, there are programs, there are distributors that are virtual. Right. There are pass through, and to me, it's not so much that that's going to disrupt the large wholesale distributors out there. It's more so that the founders and the suppliers are going to have to be more active in the selling process. There's more of an opportunity instead of just saying, great, I have a product. Now I need to go find a distributor. Sam and Dave, can you find me a distributor in Texas? And it's like, whoa, let's hold on there, And I think, and especially with there are fewer distributors, there are fewer distributor personnel, right? They're trying to, it's a very thin margin business, and they're trying to navigate all this as well. So I think what's going to come about, Sam, are the suppliers just being more active in the selling process, more active in the streets, making headquarter calls, and just participating more.
Yeah. Do you talk about that in your book, How a Supplier? Or is that book number 2?
No,
is that version 2?
Yeah, it's probably book number 2. This is it's a little more of a guidebook. Hey, here are the 3-tier systems.
Yeah, if you're going to get in,
here's the on premise.
Right.
But I do think that I want to take it to that next, that next level of relationship. And an executive at Southern I worked for a long time. He said, I will never forget it, but he's like, hey, we had a group of people, were really a large high-end retail store in Beverly Hills, and I think we were drinking some like 1950 First Gross or something that the account had. Wow. It was a great event. And he had a speech thanking this partner of who owned the retail store and saying, listen, the industry might change. So this might have been like in 2003 or 2004. We were all talking about how the industry was changing. It's really changing now. But, hey, the industry may change, but the business never will. It's always about relationships. Yeah. And that's just something that I believe in wholeheartedly, number one. But then always taught that in everyone who worked for me. And that's why I'm in the business. We started a conversation with a podcast off Adam about some of the negative press. And I'm just like, man, this is just, I'm not in the alcohol distribution business because of the alcohol. I'm in the business because of the relationships and the journey. Sam, you and I've talked about the wine journey for me. This was my second career. How did I get into wine and spirits? I did something completely different. I started in this business at 30, but there was something that happened, early on that I was like, this is it. I mean, this is absolutely where I'm going to be, for the rest of my career. And it's twist and turn. I've had a great opportunity to see a lot of things, but that's where it's tough. Like, and I don't see, and you've worked for some amazing, spirits and whiskey companies. I don't think of my visit to Lynchburg as like, well, let's go see where, people do shots and beers. It's like all the history and the nuance and the amount of work it takes to make those, like, and the
Right.
sharing of like, oh, have you ever had
And the
this?
journey and what these people
Yeah.
went through. I mean, Jack Daniels, if you go and you really listen to his story and how he created
incredible.
Jack, and then if you're in the industry, even know even deeper stories about Jack and how people had to help him get started from, like Uncle Nearest, for goodness sakes.
Yeah,
I mean, his recipe, which I'd love to have those folks on to talk about that journey for sure.
Yeah,
I'm obviously a big fan of Jack Daniels. I spent 10 years over there with those folks.
I've been to Lynchburg.
There you go. Well, that's an incredible service to come out with your book to share with the industry.
Thanks.
And I think you have to do step one before you get to step two. Because if you don't understand the industry and all the nuances associated with it, you're never going to get to step two. I mean, you said it best last week on our podcast. I don't know if you recall this, and Adam, keep me honest here, but you said the actual work starts after the placement.
Yeah, correct. I call them turns. I mean, the number one thing about any brand and building a brand is getting turns. Yeah. And brands have still come to me and, I want to be in California and Texas and Florida. And we start, here's my brand deck, and it's 38 pages of a brand deck. And I want to get to the, first, and it's got point of sale, and people have put their heart and soul into these brands. And it's not to, it's what I'm hoping the book does, and working with people like yourself, is that it highlights where they need to spend their time and effort. And I inevitably will go to the pricing right away on their deck and be like, yeah, it's completely wrong. What do you mean? It's our pricing. It's like,
I always ask the question, who's your competitive set?
Correct. And that is, that's a part of me working with a brand. And we typically start in California. I mean, it's the 6th largest country in the world. I mean, it's Southern California, Northern California. And I started in Beverly Hills and Hollywood. Now I live in Northern California. So for a brand to start, it's a great, a place to start. We can make presentations. We can do, some surveys and find out exactly are you really in the right price point. And wineries make this mistake all the time. They'll make a wine, they pick the grapes, crush the grapes, make the wine, barrel it, put it in a bottle, and then come into market and say, well, this is what I need to sell it at. It's like, yeah, but no one's going to buy the wine at that price, or you're with all the margins you need to put in there, you're at like 36.47. Like, what price point? Like, so there's a lot of that in there as well, of like, you really need to think about margins, and when you need to hold some back for marketing, right? And sampling and tasting and all those sorts of things. So I think, Sam, what you and I
go ahead.
Well, no, just what we offer is hopefully save people a lot of time and frustration for founders to say, I'm not, boots on the streets. I'm not that person at this point in time.
Right.
I'm actually in the process of acquiring my own brand,
Yeah. I don't know if you wanted to talk about that. I know that was something that you're.
Well, I practice what I preach. There's opportunity, in the market right now to take a brand that maybe the previous owners are thinking of moving on, or knowing that they have some headwinds going in and saying, we're just not, in it. And so I do practice everything I preach, in the book. I follow this, so I'm hoping people give it a read and say, well, always kind of question, what is this tied house law thing, right? People mention it, like, what is it?
Well, heck, if you don't want to pay an agency or a broker to help you in the journey, get Dave's book.
Yeah, just to start.
But at least it's a starting place for you. But all kidding aside, I know Adam's been thinking here, so I'm gonna. He's ready to fire some questions over.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, so I'm curious, and I like to do this just for myself, even every few months. when I have, the opportunity with someone like yourself, Dave, is like for example, my shoot from the hip number when I'm talking to a brand and I'm the topic I'm about to pick apart is margins, right? So to your
Correct.
point, everybody gets something
Correct.
made and then lets that impact their price, as opposed to figuring out what they have to sell
Correct.
for to be competitive and letting that dictate how they arrange the operations, which is my world, right?
Yep.
So my shoot from the hip number when I've had this conversation 6 times in the last 6 weeks. Hey, what are you planning on selling this for? And I've got a little quick spreadsheet I built, right? And I can do it either way. Like, you either tell me what you're making it for, and I'll tell you roughly where you should be selling it, or what you plan on selling it for and what you need to be making it for, right? We'll run it either way. But my shoot from the hip number is kind of 40% at every step in the process, give or take, right? As far as margin goes. Now, again, that's very shoot from the hip. Obviously, it's
going there. I can tell you, I've talked to some brands and distributors they're selling less, so they have to make more. So
and that's my question, Dave. Is what if specific to the out space, Dave? What have you seen as far as margins? Whether that's to the retailer, what have you seen?
If they're at adding 40% gross margin at each level, they should be very, very healthy. But the retailers are demanding more margin. There's all the large retailers that I can think of, and some that deal, primarily with private and control label brands. Of the margins, they're just creeping up. Where grocery margins used to be 30%. Sam, I don't know if you were around. It used to be actually 25%. We were just kind of put in the margin, and so I see these margins now that suppliers and brands will send me and giving that retailer 25 or 30% margin. I don't know anyone working off of 25 or 30%. Maybe there's some large big box stores. There's different models out there, but if you're out there for Buy the Glass and the independent retail, the lowest margin you need is 25 or 30%, and it's going up. And I think that the distributors, fuel prices are going up. Raw material prices are going up. Labor's going up. And what's so interesting, I see this a lot in wine, not so much in other things, is that the retail price rarely goes up. I mean, it's really odd. It's like everything in the entire production process has gone up, but boy, you jump over $19.99 on a wine, you're like, nope, I'm going to stay at $19.99. If that wine goes up, I'm just going to stay at $19.99. I'm not and Adam, you might have something to say. You have a lot of experience in CPG and price points and all those sorts of things. It's something that really needs to be considered. It's one thing to see margins on a spreadsheet. It's another thing to see what it's going to sit out on the shelf, and how you compare to your competitive set.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the B side, right? As we flip the record over, or, turn the tape, is whether it's ALC brands or functional brands or whatever, right? I've gone as far as to tell brand owners, hey, that 40% shoot from hip number includes you. Like, I want you to make 40%, right?
Correct.
But heavy emphasis, right? If you can get 2025, but your growth rate is, I forget where I read this, but if your growth rate is 2025, right? You might be doing okay. Heavy emphasis on might. You got to run the numbers. You got to figure out what that actually looks like.
Sure.
Bottom line dollars at the end of the day. But if you can, if there is a volume play, but again, right? And this is that give a mouse a cookie story of everybody loves to, okay, well then we'll get in with, and I'm thinking non-alc here, but we'll get in with Walmart. We'll get in with so on. No. Regional retail, mom and pop retail, right? Like, keep it. You want sales data. You want consistent sales. You want a dedicated customer base, right? Like, and if you're getting 20 to 30% margin with 20 to 30% growth rate on that, great. If you're getting 5% growth rate, your margin better be a shitload higher. Right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I'm curious when and I'm sure there's some you can share and some you can't, but with the brand that you're getting involved with, what's your take specific to that brand?
Yeah. Okay.
Now, where do you want to see them go? What does that look like?
Yeah, that's a good point. And I'm going to back up just before that on how important it is. And I'm not a CFO, not a finance guy, but I really appreciate and need to emphasize that the brands need to make sure that they have quality finance people on their team when they're starting out. They really need to, because there's cost of holding goods, there's cost of importing goods, so they're just not all those costs are factored in. Most suppliers think that, you know, the distributor margin's like, oh, distributors make that much, and it's like, Sam, you and I know this, is like, do you have any idea the cost in holding inventory? I can't imagine the inventory cost of those.
I think it's
I know.
I think it's probably between 5 and 8% a month. I know those are the numbers we're looking at.
It's just crazy. So to answer your question, Adam, for the particular brand that it's a wine brand, and so making sure that if their plan is to get acquired, right? And I am speaking with a brand right now, and like, hey, our growth model plans to get acquired by the big spirit companies. Okay, then start your accounting in the very beginning, you know, very clean, as get it ready for an acquisition. I'm going through that right now myself. But, you know, I'm starting even higher than that. My gross margin at the winery, I want to be 50%. That's my target. I don't, you know, some of it will be there. You know, the highest, you know, growing product that's not a new brand, you know, would be to net out maybe, you know, 30%, 33, 37, which is fine, because I have that same 25 or 30% growth model to it. Again, these are all modelings. Sam, you know, you guys both know this. You have to start with a plan, but everyone knows you're just going to be redoing that plan very soon. So you have to start with a plan, and I'm factoring in, you know, margins for retailers. So this, and my distributors, and it goes back to relationships, and something that I've always instilled people who have worked with me, and with the relationships that I have there, both out there on the distributor side or on the retail side, is my communication style. And this is a lot what I want to get into in the second book, you know, and like keeping emails to less than 6 sentences, making sure that Grammarly is connected, there's no spelling errors, bullet points, you know, there's some communication. So to answer your question, Adam, I think one reason I go in with the realistic margin, right? We're negotiating, maybe on my bar, I've got some room there, but I show exactly what my retailer, what their margin's going to be. And it's going to be at target or above at what the retail price is. And I might indicate there might be a TPR, a temporary price reduction. So to me, that conveys to the retailer to be like, oh, this guy's thought about margin. He's thought about if we need to do a discount or a planogram or something like that, let's talk. So over the years, you develop those kind of relationships. And it's the same thing with distributors. And that's what I hope to do with the book, and people that work with myself, is to give them the information, you know, the guidelines, the templates, the methodology on how to communicate. These distributors are very busy. They're getting sent products from all over the world every day, which I do not suggest doing, you know, going with a targeted approach. So I hope that answers your question, but it's like, you know, I'm starting at between 40 and 50% after my cost of goods. I start there. I've got a target to where I'm hoping it's kind of a, you know, it's an average. I call it a net FOB or adjusted FOB. Like, here's my FOB, but by the time I factor in, you know, quantity deals and buy the glass and bill backs and DAs and those sorts of things, it kind of averages about that.
Well, I think you're going to create a cohort in 2025. Alicia,
I need smart technical guys like you to produce.
Well, we'll help you. We'll help you do that. But Alicia says Dave's book should be a mandatory read for any new brand entering the U.S. market. A brand has to graduate in the beverage industry like a driver's license test.
That's great. Well, thank you, Alicia, very much.
Yeah. She's thanks for. You have to get Alicia on the show now. She's contributing.
Yeah. Well, I've got a call. She has an incredible background, and I've got a call with her on Monday. The book has spurred some interest in brands, and I didn't really set out to, you know, consult with brands. I was like, this is a little window of time where I'm negotiating the purchase of this particular brand and finish the book. I was always thinking about in these brands, like, hey, well, can you work with me? Can you work with me? And the acquisition is taking a little bit longer. So I'm like, okay, sure. So I have a call with Alicia on Monday to kind of talk about, she has an incredible background and a long history of success with brands. So maybe there's some things we can end up doing together.
Definitely. Looking forward to hearing about that. You know, so Adam, you're thinking again, man. I just to know what are you thinking?
Well, it's just funny to me, and I mean that in the best way. But when I think about, you know, for myself, because of course, like as we're talking about it, right? The education piece, writing a book, so on and so forth. To me, it's an automatic. Well, of course, people are going to come to you for consulting, right? So the fact that you already had so much going on that kind of took you by surprise is a testament to your schedule, right? But
Yeah.
B, I mean, this was
It is
something-
steelhead season out here in California, so you're getting up at you guys. Hey, can you get on the podcast at 7:30? You're like, oh yeah, we get up early when it's steelhead season out here. Yeah,
for sure.
But
But I mean, even going back to, and if there's anybody from BevSource listening to this, I mean, I hope I'm not giving away, it's been long enough. I don't think I'm giving away any trade secrets, but years ago, in the early days of my role there, we always we'd kick the can around on this idea around, we called it BevU, right? Meaning Beverage University. And that's the idea that continues to crop up when we're talking about this and the whole point was kind of exactly what we're talking about of, it'll be easier for us to work with a brand owner, A, and B, it'll be easier for the brand owner, period, if we can somehow, whether it's an online school, a book, a webinar, whatever, but give them some base level of knowledge. Because, I mean, you guys both know it even better than I do, but the number of brands that I would walk forward, if you will, on the timeline into a meeting with a distributor, a meeting with a co-packer, and think that because they had a deck that said how wonderful their brand was, but said nothing about them understanding the day-to-day lives of the distributors, employees, employees, right? They would walk in and fall flat on their face because the distributor's like, you don't understand how I operate. You think just because you're awesome, I'm going to take you on, and that's not the way it works.
Yeah.
Right? No.
I think that's well said. It's interesting. I'm going to put you on the spot, Dave. Can you pull your book out?
Yeah.
Did someone write like a foreword or anything like on your book, like anything to outline or like your conclusion, like on the back? Do you want to read that to everybody?
Oh, you would pick out something, right? I did not. I did. There's a preface that I wrote.
Yeah.
But I didn't ask anyone to get involved. I just didn't. Sam, I just wanted to see if I could do it. These are my thoughts. As I said, I've got enough. I got enough experience to have an opinion. I've worked in all three tiers, and it just kind of made sense to. I had the time to do it. So no, I'm not going to read anything from it because I'm a horrible reading.
Well, if I have the book, I'll do it. I'll read some stuff.
Yeah, go ahead. You can read some stuff, but I really wanted to, just let people know that that I've worked in all three tiers. It doesn't make me an expert, but there are things. And Sam, you've been on both sides, right?
Yeah.
Most people don't. You get involved in one side of the business and you stay there.
Right.
Typically, there was a post recently I made on LinkedIn about walking in the shoes of a distributor. It was like, hey, suppliers, walk a mile in the shoes or something like that. And it just got for me, it's hundreds of comments, which is a lot for me.
It's a lot.
Not to my daughters, but they're like, Dad, hundreds. I mean, come on, Dad. But
that's huge.
But it was. I think it really speaks to that, and there's that in this book. It's kind of like a guideline or a template of like how should each communicate. I think the next version or updated version of another book will be specifically to that. So you put me on the spot to read a section. I don't know if anything's really worth.
What's the back of the book say? What's the conclusion?
Okay, okay, that's a good point here. So unlock the secrets of success in the U.S. alcohol industry with this essential guide for startups and new entrants. Written by seasoned industry veteran with over 2 decades of experience, that's me, launching your alcohol brand in the U.S. offers insider knowledge and practical strategies for navigating the complex 3-tier distribution system. From understanding the regulatory landscape and developing effective brand strategies, this comprehensive resource covers every aspect of building a thriving alcohol brand. Learn how to forge strong relationships with distributors, maximize your product's potential, and confidently resolve compliance issues, which is something that can't be understated. Whether you're a craft brewer, a boutique winery, or artisan distiller, this book equips you with the tools and insights you need to overcome challenges and seize the opportunities in the world's most complex. Well, the not for resale sign got the other stuff out, but that's, I think that says it. It's top lines a few things. I'm being humble about it, and it was interesting. My niece, I was with my niece and nephew before they went to college last night. They're like, Uncle Dave, you wrote a book. They're like, you're #1 on the free. Well, it's on the free list right now. So it was, a big sense of accomplishment. I hope people find it useful. But
I believe they will. Don't sometimes, I've been in this industry for 38 years, and I just assume people know the stuff I know. So don't discount what they don't know. And there's real value there. And there's value in that book more so than in terms of what you just published, because there's a lot of secrets in our industry. We don't really want it to be a secret, but we've all been in it and grew up in it. And especially the people that have been on all three sides of it, they kind of understand that, piece. So, but it's wonderful that you're able to share that. I want to transition something a little bit. Let's talk more about you.
Sure.
So, I guess we don't really know what's next. I think you're you're maybe looking at a brand, doing some consulting. But what's your why? What's your purpose? Like, what's your purpose?
Oh man, yeah. Well, when it comes to a brand, and the reason why it makes sense to have my own brand is because I want to find people that would like to go on the journey with me. And when I think about this particular wine brand, or maybe a potential wine brand, it could be something else. I happen to be passionate about wine, and I've always thought of my wine being involved in wine as a journey. I've traveled to Europe, half a dozen times. I've traveled the world in different wine countries, and it's still exciting. Every year, every vintage. I happen to have an affinity for fine Pinot Noir, but I've never been to Burgundy. But that's what I'm hoping. So my why is to find people to go on this journey with me. I think brands will survive. I think when we have the negative press that's come out, I think it's just unfortunate because not everyone is in the business to just make alcohol brands so people can get their buzz on. Not to talk anything about. There's a brand out there, Buzz. It's not. But I think all alcohol has just been lumped into it. I think you guys started off. It's just like it's all just one. It's just one. It's alcohol. It's all of it. It's all included no matter what. And it's like, I'm coming out with my business partner. We have a low alcohol white wine spritzer, a dry white wine spritzer. It's 8% alcohol, it's 0 sugar. It's like, and it tastes like wine. I think low alc has kind of a long-term position here. Wines from Europe typically have been lower in alcohol. And
what
so
percentage of alcohol is in bread, by the way?
In bread.
Adam, you have to know, Adam.
I don't actually, but I love the question. I've heard it before.
Yeah.
I don't really.
Interesting.
There's alcohol in everything.
Yeah.
So when they publish that, by the way, I'm not an expert, so please ask your doctor and the Surgeon General. But there's alcohol in your bread. I got news.
Yeah. Interesting.
So your low alcohol comments very. Can someone Google what the alcohol content of bread is? I don't want to give the wrong figure.
No, I'm on it right now. Alcohol content of bread can vary from 0.04 to 1.9 ABV.
That's crazy. How crazy is that, right? How crazy is that? That's
so.
funny.
Are we going to put the Surgeon General on bread that it can cause cancer?
Yeah, I don't know. I think this is I don't know the agenda. I don't know why now is the time. I know it's a challenging time for brands for growing, and I think just because it's a noisy world. My oldest daughter turned 21, and I took some of her while she was home for break, and I took her and some of her friends out, and they were like, "Hey, what should we get?" I'm like, "Oh, 21, you still know what to get." A couple of people know what to get right away, but it was interesting because the conversation was like, "How do you guys decide on what to drink or not to drink, or what to chew on, or what to smoke?" I mean, it's just the amount of just, and all these brands are coming to them on social medias where they're all spending their time. So it's like the amount of noise out there in deciding what's out there. And for someone to say, well, like, it's just now all bad. It's like, whoa, like, I just don't understand enough of it. I just don't understand the negative press.
That's not why everybody gets in the category. Certainly there are some
exactly
the volume and the whole bit, but it's more about the romance, the
to me it is
the journey.
To me it is.
Those things for sure.
I've always loved the seasonality of wine. For me, there was something, prior to getting into the wine business, I was I was a coach. I was a football and basketball coach, and I loved the season, right? There was just something about, you know, your preseason, off season, you're in season. And I think that's one reason people have asked me, like, well, what tier that I've enjoyed the most. And I really enjoyed my days with the wholesalers. You know, I love the team, the challenge, the pressure from the suppliers, the resistance from the retailers, and that camaraderie, your team's together, you're in the boiler room at the end of the month and making your placements and your quotas and stuff. I always, really enjoyed that cycle.
They have wholesalers have a lot of masters that they have to please.
Yeah, for sure. And so I find that that's in the wine business. I get that same kind of like, how are the grapes looking? You know, talking to the vineyard managers or the winemakers or whatever, tasting the wines and barrels. And that's what's so fun about going down the Bourbon Trail is tasting all these different expressions and these different, I really enjoy that part.
Well, our category is wonderful in terms of the experiences and the journey that you can take and learn about these brands and these founders and what they've accomplished. Even some of the newer brands on the market, like, Tito's. Like, I had the opportunity to meet Bertito Beverage. His story is remarkable.
I sold Tito's when it was, I'm not saying starting out, but it was in San Francisco, and it was just kind of limping along. And oh yeah, that sounds craft. And it is craft. I mean, everyone has to spend time, effort, and energy on their brands, and just to watch out. I'm not saying I was responsible for building Tito's in San Francisco.
Well, you were.
To watch that meteoric, or Bullet Bourbon as an example, or Don Julio Tequila, or Fernet Branca. I mean, there's interesting, and I think we talked about this, or I might have mentioned that your guys' last pod was, you never know where these brands are going to take off, or maybe some people know. I mean, for us, we know enough. As I explained to brands that work with me, it's like, I don't know, what's going to make a brand successful, but I certainly know that if you don't do a certain number of things, you're almost guaranteed failure.
That's what blows my mind today with a lot of wholesalers. They're saying no to brands.
I just don't know. Yeah,
I don't understand that, because Shane Lohman, you haven't met Shane, but Shane's co-hosting with us here, and he owned a distributor in Pittsburgh, I believe, and he sold it. But we're talking about Athletic.
Yeah,
when Athletic came to him, he turned them down.
Yeah. Well, and I think the larger wholesalers, I mean, they have, like you said, they have a lot of masters to please, but they'll have craft divisions or boutique wine divisions. I think one of the big wholesalers has a technical platform that's helping brands. So I think they need to continue to invest in those. I think as technology improves and communication improves, it'll empower suppliers. That's what I'm hoping the book does, because to empower the suppliers to say, go ahead and meet with that retailer. They're open to meeting with you, and I know they're open to meeting with you, because I've worked at wholesalers, and that's where I think a big piece is missing in certain parts of the country is that mid-size wholesaler, that doesn't have a lot of masters to please, that can take chances on brands and kind of build brands, right? Make brand ambassadors out of this. And I've worked for one of those distributors, and I was responsible for suppliers. And it meant a lot when a supplier would meet with me and said, hey, I just got out of the meeting with so-and-so from this retailer. They're bringing it into the spring set. And I'm like, I'll bring you in. You have a sale. You're bringing me a reason to listen to you. If it's just coming in and saying, hey, here's my product, it's great. So I see that as hopefully the book will do some of that, but I just encourage suppliers to part. You're going to have to play a bigger part in the 3-tier process.
Oh yeah, it's we hear people say, well, the wholesaler didn't do this, the wholesaler didn't do that. It's like, wait a minute. It's like, you got to understand what wholesaling is. They're logistics companies. They get that product from point A to point B, and they do it very effectively and very efficiently.
Very good. And those retailers are dependent upon it. They need, a retailer cannot be out of product, right? And in supplier world, there's 2 rules. 1, don't run out of product, and 2, don't raise your price, right, Sam? Like,
fulfillment is a real thing. I'll name the brand nameless, as Adam would always say, but I was working with a little brand, and they had nationwide distribution across Bevmo and Total Wine & More. And they couldn't fill the order. So when Total would show up to pick it up, they're like, hey, we'll be ready in 4 weeks. And they had distribution in about 10 states, 10 distributors across 10 states. And what happened is they would come in and say, I want my different my beers and they couldn't fill them up. So guess what the distributors did? I can't protect the shelf space anymore.
Yeah,
so
no, you can't.
Their business slowly dissipated. So as you're developing a brand, one thing operationally, Adam, and maybe you have some things to say about this, is I see a lot of brands try to go a mile wide and an inch deep, and they run out of money.
Yeah.
They can't make the product. And I think you just experienced this.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's the analogy I love using, and it's the very simple and short advice I always give to brands. It's better to be a mile deep and an inch wide for as long as you possibly can, and then expand incrementally from there. I am curious, Dave, while we've got you at the kind of the last, few minutes here.
Sure.
I feel like a lot of and you've touched on it already a little bit, but I would love, kind of a deeper explanation or your thoughts. I feel like a lot of the folks I talk to, or a lot of the conversations I have, are around how to help a brand get a meeting with a distributor or a wholesaler, right? How to help a brand get a meeting with a retailer. And don't get me wrong, that's certainly, that's half of the equation, right? But to your point, and this is what made me think of it, is whether it's wholesalers, co-packers, vendors, there is a need for small to mid-size everything, right?
Okay, sure. Everyone's always looking for new brands, right? Everyone's always interested. The world doesn't need a new brand, but brands are built every day. So
here's my question: is
sure,
if I'm Adam's mid-sized wholesaler, and I want to bring in new brands, but I am just absolutely terrified of picking the wrong one and then being left with someone that can't fulfill orders or doesn't know what they're doing or whatever. So if you're Dave's Consulting and you're talking to Adam's distributor, and I'm like, hey man, teach me how to, not every brand's going to succeed. We know that, but teach me how to, instead of picking winners 1% of the time, pick winners 12% of the time. Right.
Yeah.
What's your advice there?
Are the terms, get proof of concept in the marketplace. As a founder, you should be willing to, in my opinion, you should be willing to make some account calls yourself. You should understand the number of no's you're going to get before a yes. You should have an appreciation, for those things. And so I think working with Sam or myself as brands is we do that. We find retailers, we have relationships. Okay, we'll give it a try. We kind of orchestrate all that much. So if a retailer can go too much, like the story about this brand coming to me and said, "Oh, I just met with so-and-so at this, we've got 230 placements that are coming in spring." It's immediate, has my attention. I have built-in sales. Now I'll take a look at their deck, find out what their on-premise and off-premise pricing and all those sorts of things. I think the best thing brands can do, because there are technologies, there's services out there. I think some people call it, 2.5 tiers or a pass-through or clearinghouse. There are companies out there that do this for the largest retailers in the country. So it's 3-tier compliance. So, the proof of concept, there's just nothing.
I think if you go through
you're a small brand,
you're testing and building phase, and also, we always ask for your VPO, your velocity per outlet.
There you go.
And then, I took a little brand called Irva Teas. I don't know if Juan and Tiffany are watching, but they work with a little company called Wendy, and they've been on their journey for 10 years. But it's a mate, which is a tea. But we were able to back into some numbers for them. A gentleman by the name of Wayne Latomsky, this brilliant beverage guy. But they sell 1 to 2 cases a week, in an outlet. I used to work as a category captain inside American stores years ago, by the way, and they had what's called the 1-in-1 rule. You know what the 1-in-1 rule is? You have to sell 1 unit and generate $1 of sales of profit per week.
Yeah.
So if I'm selling, 1 to 2 units a week, that's pretty darn good. That shelf is there's good turn or whatever. It might have been like a case or whatever. But my point is you're right, or your point, Dave, is if I'm going to go to a wholesaler, here's my VPO. And I think how you get there is through the different avenues, like these pass-throughs, or we told a relatively large or a founding brand, you need to self-distribute here in Minneapolis.
Correct. You should start that way. There's just no reason not to. There's so many systems. There's so many great resources like yourself, Sam, and Alicia. There's great resources out there to say, okay, here's how we're going to import. We're going to work on your compliance and all these sorts of things.
Yeah.
It's possible out there. It exists. I don't think anyone's done it, formally. If someone could figure it out, I don't know, maybe someone could figure, I don't.
That's book number 3, by the way, coming in the future.
There's the barriers to entry are lower than they've ever been, if that makes sense. Like
100%.
if you want to sell a brand and enter the market, you've got a marketing outlet, you've got social media, you've got a retail outlet because you've got pass-through or 3-tier. And before you go to one of the larger wholesalers or mid-tier wholesalers, if you've gone through, the school of Sam or the school of Dave, and they've been working with you for 6 months, a year, 18 months, and you've got some distribution, you have proof of concept, they're going to take the meeting.
Yeah.
And we talked about this yesterday.
Look up the brand Saint Spritz. And Mallory, I don't know if you'll catch this. I know we're going to talk in a couple of weeks, but I talked to her when she just began her journey with her sister-in-law, JoJo. JoJo was on The Bachelorette, and they started with DTC.
Yeah, sure.
And they're blowing up. I mean, that brand is doing really well. I think, Adam, I don't know if you touched that brand at all in the past as well, but that
a couple years ago.
the point is that that company didn't sit and wait. They went and created the value, and they used their influencer, obviously, some fame and influencing, and they're selling a journey and a dream and an experience.
Sure. You don't need a wholesaler to do that. You don't need that.
Now wholesalers want them. Now they're getting
correct.
into RNDCs and HEB, and it's I see her post every other week, and I see them winning with these huge displays and stuff.
There you go.
But that's a great example.
It can happen, and that's, Adam, to answer your question. I think that's where brands should start. To say how well, let's go just meet with my retailers. Just nothing preventing them from walking in, talking to a center store manager to say, I've come out with this great beer, wine, or spirit, and I'm local, and I see people doing tastings here on a weekly basis. I mean, there's there are these clearing houses or buying direct in the state of California. And you refer a winery, you typically have a Type 2 license, which is a wholesale license. You just ship directly to stores in California. So I think going to a wholesaler or a distributor after you have some of those things, and after, of course, you've read the book, and Sam knows this. So we've been doing it long enough to know that. Sure, we can call distributors. We have distributor, contacts and colleagues around the country, around the world. But before I introduce them to you, I need to know that you follow Dave's philosophy. That this is how you're going to communicate.
You passed the driving test? Have you passed the driving test? Sounds like you're going to be creating a cohort again.
Okay, I'll have you guys put it together. So I think, Adam, that's the point, is that they're just go out there and prove it, get some turns. You'll have some key takeaways. You're like, wow, at this price point, it sold at this, but when I did this, it did this great. I thought this was my cocktail, of choice. I always encourage brands to have like a clear hero as well. Like one that okay, yes, we do Chardonnay, we do Cabernet, we do Pinot Noir, but Pinot Noir is our hero. That's the one, and really come in, start with your wholesalers with, for those portfolios that might have multiple SKUs, start with your best 2 or 3 that are going to turn, that that's going to have some traction with, that are interesting to the marketplace, not based upon your PowerPoint presentation, but we've got this person on board, we've been doing it for this long, because wholesalers want the next biggest thing, and retailers want the next biggest thing too. If you've called on Costco, Sam, they are the culture that they have is they truly want that to be a discovery process. They want to bring in products that their members feel like the buyers at Costco help discover. And I'm talking about
it's called treasure hunt.
It's a treasure hunt. So they absolutely want new brands. Now, if you've got some proof of sales and you have your proof of concept, you've got your pricing model worked out, and you have kind of all those logistic things to figure out. Like I said, I worked for a mid-sized wholesaler in California. It's no longer around, but we sit in this perfect position where if a brand would go meet with one of the large chain or medium chain retailers here in California, those retailers would say, call Dave Moore and his team. Here's his number, call them. So they knew, the retailer, our relationship with them, knew that we could execute, knew that we were big enough to execute on whatever planogram, whatever that was. And so they were appreciative because they're like, wow, I found a really cool brand that I want to bring in. It's going to be really hard to get that brand into some of these large wholesalers. This brand doesn't really know enough to do it all themselves, but to have kind of a mid-tier option. And there's some great mid-sized and small distributors across the country. It's the other thing I love working in this industry, just awesome people. But that was a way. So I first, if if so and so sent me the brand, I'm like, okay, this is true. This is, this is happening. And then we could accelerate that brand. And it's crazy to see some of the brands on the shelves out there. We're like, huh, I brought that brand. But we brought that brand in too. So I think it's a real service. I know the retailers appreciated what we were doing. I appreciated the retailers taking the time, and the suppliers got to come in and, learn how to build a brand in a small wholesaler. And I see those as some headwinds, Sam. I mean, I don't get too far on a tangent, but to have kind of that small to mid-sized tier, some states it's a challenge. In California, it really is. We've got the top that's awesome, and we've got some really cool boutique guys, but that mid-size I think is challenging here in California right now. But there's some great ones in Florida.
The dynamics, what I'm kind of watching, and it's another podcast for another day, but the tariffs, to see what impact it has on our industry.
Yeah.
I think there'll be some positives, but I think the implications could be pretty brutal here in the future. Just to wrap up, I want to maybe have you leave. What would you want to leave the audience with in terms of maybe some key takeaways for us to walk away with? One is obviously buy your book. So please send me the information and let's put it on the screen here real quick again. You want to show your book, please? Live Social.
It's available. The ebook version is available on Amazon, and during this launch phase, as a gift to you and your listeners, it's free right now for everyone who wants to go on Amazon and download it. It's only free for a few days. The official launch is actually on Tuesday. We're going to launch the book. The paperback is also available. I love Alicia's idea of making it a requirement for all her suppliers. Well, I won't be with you.
He has them in hand at WSWA, so you have a disciple out there, pitching for you. The whole bit. So, Adam, any closing, or Dave? So, any closing thoughts, Dave? And then
no, just say, to people ask, what do you think? Hey, all the negative press about, the negative effects of alcohol, the tariffs. So what do you think? And I'm still, it's not even hopeful. I'm confident that brands that have authenticity and passion behind their founders, that resonate with consumers, will be fine. That's my bold prediction, but it's going to be hard work. It's not easy. The end game is not to find a distributor. The end game isn't to just make that placement. That's where things start. So it's a lot of work. If you enjoy relationships and seeing things grow and experiencing, these awesome products with cool people such as yourselves, and I look forward to getting in person when you guys aren't, when you're not contagious with your colds that you currently have. But I think those people that are in the business, but that's how it started. Sam, you and I started. There were no publicly traded companies. There was none of this. There were just cool people. There were workless, and the supplier would grab the bag and go see accounts, and it was fun. I just think it's a noisy world. I think everyone's trying to figure it out, but I'm hopeful that I think the crazy thing is, I'll leave with this. It's like, that's not crazy, but there's just a never shortage of new brands, and we need to, Sam, you need that, and Adam as well. We need to just continue to share what it takes to get them off the ground, point them in the right direction, and then, follow them along the way. But I know there's going to be some cool stuff that comes out next year, and whether it's in Bev Alc or something else, it's going to be a journey. So I love that comment.
That's awesome. Adam, any closing thoughts?
Just to echo what Dave said, I mean, somebody I was talking to the other day said a similar version, and that is, if you're new to the industry, whether that's alc, non-alc, whatever it is, find somebody who's done it before. Myself, Sam, Dave, just have a conversation with somebody who's walked the road. They're not going to know everything, but they're probably going to know more than you do.
Yeah.
They're going to help you, develop a plan and avoid some pitfalls and stuff. So, I mean, that's the educational piece, Dave, that you touched on is whether it's required reading or not, right? It has to get done, so it should be required.
Correct.
Conversation should be required. So that's what I'll end with.
Well, that's awesome. Great. Well, I would just say, just pick up the phone and dial and answer when they call. That's been my battle cry lately.
Always. Yeah, pick up the phone, man.
Yeah, I mean, we all hide behind Calendly and book appointments, everything else. I think finally, Dave, I think you and I let's just have a conversation. I think we were just just pick up the phone. I mean, it's back in my day, to get anything done, there was no computer. I had to pick up the phone and call. And I don't know about y'all, but I'd recommend make yourself available, be available. And then if you need help, just call, ask the question. There's a lot of people here that will give you the information you need to go be successful. Sure. But Dave, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, you got it.
Thank you, Dave.
It was tremendous. And everybody, thanks for riding the wave with us. Thanks, and we'll see you next weekend.
All right. Really appreciate it, guys. Thank you so much. Happy New Year.
Dave. Take care.
Okay.
Good to see you soon.
Bye, guys. Dave, you can stay if you want.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. So I ended it. But anyway, that's so.